All right, so now we understand what the actual allegations are against Diddy. Let's talk about how we got there. So the reason that Diddy is being accused of all those things is because, one, the civil suit or the criminal suit slash civil suit that was filed against him regarding a essing at the studio, multiple allegations about the Tupac situation, and a mentioning of money being exchanged afterwards. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but legally, social media and any confessions made on social media can be extracted and used in forming a case, as long as it's coming from a valid or a valuable resource. And when certain people work for you, when they're on your team, when you're able to see behind the scenes, they consider you a resource, no matter how educated or uneducated you are. So that's where the G trafficking comes from. Now, for the D trafficking, there has been multiple allegations that Diddy has been supplying various celebrities drugs to sedate their wives, so that way they're submissive and unresponsive, and they do as they tell them. So this is where the D trafficking allegations come from. Now, again, although there may be no court documents filed for this specific case or this specific situation, when you have somebody who's been working for you for years, they're considered a valid or valuable resource. And especially if they've been documented for working for you, that's considered a test. They're testifying, but just not in court. So that's where the D trafficking comes from. Now, there's the S trafficking. As everyone knows, the situation that occurred with Cassie, this is where the S trafficking comes from. Now, where Diddy went wrong is that he did not take Cassie to trial and instead decided to settle. Now, when you settle, that's technically an admittance of guilt. It's almost kind of like saying nolo contendere. It's kind of like saying no contest. You're not going to contest the situation, but you're not going to say you did it, but you're not going to say you didn't do it. You're just going to seal it by paying for it to go away. Now, Diddy did sign a non-disclosure agreement with Cassie, but Cassie decided that she didn't want to keep her mouth closed, and she opened her mouth and started talking about what happened during their relationship. This is where Diddy went wrong, that he did not take her to trial and clear his name. Now, just because you settle an agreement with someone, you come to a monetary agreement and you sign an NDA, does not mean that this cannot come back up and bite you in the butt, especially when the person who decides to speak against that NDA. And usually speaking against an NDA only occurs if the person who's speaking up knows that there are other charges that can implicate this person that'll potentially not get them in trouble for talking in the first place. Because there are legal charges for breaking an NDA, but if the case is strong enough, then it wouldn't matter if you break that NDA, because you take this person to trial and they'd be found guilty anyway, so you don't suffer any of those implications. Now, as I was saying, just because you settle a case or you're found not guilty does not mean that that case cannot come back around. A prosecutor has the right to look into that case, reopen a case, and find other charges in that case in order to implicate you. Now, a lot of us know about double jeopardy, but when we think about double jeopardy, we think, oh, you just can't go to court for the same situation. You can't go to court for the same issue. This is true. However, a state prosecutor has the right to reopen any case and use that case as a resource in order to form other charges against you. Since Diddy did settle with Cassie, that's considered an admittance of guilt. He basically admitted that he was guilty by just paying the situation away. It's kind of like saying nolo contraende, no contest. You're not going to talk about it. You don't want to think about it, but that does not mean that you did not do it. So because Diddy did not take it to trial and instead paid Cassie, he now has technically admitted to being guilty. That, in conjunction with all of the testimonies, the witness testimonies by way of Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, etc., this has allowed for probable cause. And all it takes is probable cause in order to get a search warrant from a judge. Now, Diddy's wealth does have a lot to do with this as well, because Diddy is a billionaire and he has the ability to purchase in large quantities and is being accused of three of America's biggest underground problems. He's now considered a threat to America. This is why he was not just raided by the feds. He was actually raided by a military organization. This is why the military raided his home. It wasn't SWAT. It was the military. Now, the Department of Defense is who actually raided his home. Department of Defense, Homeland Security. Now, Homeland Security is a branch that was formed under the Department of Defense after 9/11, after the Twin Towers went down, in order to keep a closer eye on situations like this, so that way America is prepared for these situations before they occur and we're not caught off guard. So Diddy is not just being accused of minor behind your backyard, cooking up drugs type situation. He's actually being accused of being an American terrorist. Now, the questions that we need to ask ourselves are, one, is this being blown out of proportion? The things that he's being accused of, is it what we're accusing him of? Because I think we can all kind of get a little distracted by social media and interpret it as news. That's where the term fake news comes from. So we need to separate what we're seeing on the actual news from what is the news in social media. So basically, social media is considered word on the street, news in the streets. And media, when you're actually watching news, Fox News, CNN, whatever the case may be, whatever news station you may be, it may not be 100% accurate, but it's at least 88% accurate versus social media, which is maybe about 15% accurate and is mainly considered to be popular opinion. Now, Rodney Jones does still have an open case against Diddy. So we need to ask, are we accusing Diddy of the same thing that the Department of Defense is accusing him of? All right. Although the timelines are overlapping, they are still two separate cases. So again, we need to ask ourselves, where do we stand on this? And I know you're probably like, it doesn't matter where I stand on it. It's going to happen anyway. I don't have any effect on this man's life. Yes, you do. Because wherever we stand on it is the direction that social media will lean, and serves as a representative of Diddy's character in the case, because they look at the person's character. And if we are showing him to be somebody of bad character, then he could potentially be treated as a terrorist. So I urge you to treat each case differently. Treat the allegations where he's being raided by the Department of Defense differently than you would treat the allegations that were brought up by Rodney Jones and Cassie. Right now, those cases, those situations are still sitting pending in court. Let's put that aside. Since it's still pending, let's put that aside and focus on what isn't pending, which is the recent raid, etc. Those are the ones that have been brought to the forefront